Welcome to Financial Freedom on Autopilot, where we help you draw out the map to unlock true freedom. Here's your host, real estate syndicator that's managed over 173 deals and doors over the past 18 years, Ivan Alfaro. Enjoy.
Welcome to Financial Freedom on Autopilot. I'm Ivan, and this is my good buddy,
Ted Steinkamp with Advanta IRA.
Hey, thanks for coming and listening or watching. And we just have a whole bunch of information for you today on IRAs. This is the first time, like last week when I met him, that I found out how it actually works. I never had anybody that could really explain it the way he does. It's all a bunch of gobbledygook and a lot of ways to work this. And so he explained it in very simple terms through case studies. And so I can't wait to just share that stuff with you through his expertise, not even just in IRAs, but outside in the financial industry entirely. So speaking of that, let's go into his experience in his career. 35 years in the financial services industry across commercial, institutional, and international banking for 7 years. He had credit commitments of up to $150 million. He did financial advisement and institutional sales, 12 years. Managed 2 books totaling 130 million across 75 clients. Second book was 5.5 billion across 28 clients. So they had a little bit of money in their bank. And a retirement plan, consulting, and management for 6 years. He built another book of business, wealth management for 2 years. Great culture, great company, but needed more of a challenge. So he moved on from that. He got into commercial real estate finance. So that's kind of intersecting with my world for 8 years. He specialized in complex transactions, rebuilt the firm after partners' unexpected passing. And of course, he's at Advanta IRA now, working with clients seeking to raise capital, like hedge funds operator like me. So a lot of stuff. I'm sure that's just the surface of the amazingness that Ted Steinkamp is. So do you want to explain a little bit more on your personal side too, Ted?
Yeah, a little bit. Why don't I also just back up just a touch, Ivan,
Yeah.
into the business resume, because this is where the personal side of it kind of spills over. When you're in this business for 35 years, you see a lot of stuff, you experience a lot of stuff, but you're always looking for new opportunities. And one of the new opportunities that came up when I had to rebuild the firm after my business partner's death a couple of years ago was I took that real estate firm or that entity and created it, or transformed it, I should say, into my own personal investment vehicle. And that today is a lot of what enables me to do certain things, particularly here at Advanta IRA, but also still keeps my foot in the past business life, but also allows me to step forward into the future. Now, when I am not working, which is rare, I'm one of those people who just cannot sit down and watch TV. I'm bored. I don't think I've turned on a TV in my house in 2 years.
Wow.
You will find me just talking to people, family, friends. You can tell by the natural platinum highlights I have. I'm a little bit older than Ivan, but I play guitar. I've got 46 years on these fingers.
Wow.
Each and every year it amazes me because that number goes up. Used to play hockey many years ago. So when I do watch TV, it is at a sports bar watching NHL hockey with beverage in hand. I may be in the gym, and hey, there's times I just need to enjoy quiet time. And that's kind of me on the personal and the professional side. And thanks for the good intro on the professional side, Ivan.
Yeah. The main structure of this podcast is the map. So it's mindset, action, and planning.
Mm-hmm.
And you just touched on a big thing right there. So mindset, you take time to work on your hobbies, you disconnect from the world so you can recharge.
Yeah.
What's your version of quiet time? Do you like to go up to a mountain somewhere and chill out, or?
No, no, I haven't gone to that extent yet. I do have a few friends that'll literally do that live in Colorado and they'll just meditate and look at the landscape. That's not me. I've got to have a creative outlet and a physical outlet.
Okay.
That's really what motivates me. Going to the gym, just blowing off the steam, all the frustrations of the day, take it out on a stack of weights. That helps, particularly when it comes down to sleep. One of the lifestyle habits I have developed over the years, I used to only sleep 4 hours a night, sometimes out of necessity.
Wow.
Today, I sleep 5 hours a night,
Mm.
which is unusual. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't get by without any less than 8 or 9." My body's programmed after 4 or 5 hours of sleep, I just sit up and I'm ready to go.
Wow.
It's just whenever I get it. But on the creative side, that's why I play guitar. I will go into the kitchen and try to create something. I do like to cook,
Hmm.
all sorts of different cuisine, and different types of food. I'm not somebody who draws or does sculpture or painting. I've
Okay.
never developed those skills. Maybe I will one day in the future, but I've got to have those creative and physical outlets.
Yeah. Speaking of outlets, like that's kind of time commitments, kind of blocking off your day to do certain things. What sort of time commitment should it look like to invest with an IRA? Like educating yourself, like doing all the procedures. I'm sure largely you guys could help a lot with that and, delegating. But like, what does that look like from a time
Yeah,
commitment?
we can. If, just looking back over time, if I was someone just entering the world thinking about utilizing a self-directed IRA to invest, I would say the first place to spend the time is learn the basic rules of the IRA or of using self-directed IRAs. You don't have to become a subject matter expert.
Mhm.
Don't waste your time with that. That's where the custodian comes into play. One of the things that Advanta IRA is very proud about is the service model. We have clients that will reach out to us and just share with us their investment idea, just making sure they understand the rules appropriately. And that's one of the biggest values we can bring as a custodian. But it's also a time value for you. I said, don't become a subject matter expert. That takes a lot of time. Just you probably only need to spend maybe 5 to 10 hours understanding the basic rules, how they apply, look at a few case studies, and that'll make you good to go. Everything else, bounce it off the custodian.
Mhm.
Yeah, just ask them the questions, make sure everything's in good graces with the IRS or will be.
Yeah, and later on in our time together, we're actually going to pull up slides from your deck
Yeah,
and go after specific do's and don'ts. So you'll also be equipped that way. Uh,
yeah.
what is some actionable ways that they could train up and learn about the process?
Yeah, here's the thing, just with investing in general, um, the more creative you are, the better. I can tell you right now, within IRAs, regardless if they're at a brokerage firm or over here at Advanta IRA and they're self-directed, there's two things you cannot invest in according to the IRS rules. That is life insurance contracts and collectibles. So no baseball cards, artwork, fine wine, exotic sports cars, none of that.
Okay.
IRS will say BS. We're just allowing that. And
Yeah.
trust me, people have tried it over the years. But anything else outside of that, the universe is wide open. And I was just having a conversation with my manager before I got on the Zoom call with you. We're going to be doing a webinar series, or at least we're planning one, where we're probably going to be presenting some case studies, but also some of the creative things we see here with the clients at Advanta IRA.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, the most high profile investments are going to be real estate. That's probably 60% of what we see over here.
Mm.
And the world of real estate is very broad.
Yeah.
whether we're talking about attainable housing, which is what you specialize in, Ivan.
Yeah.
Some people just want rental houses. They want to invest in syndications, the paper assets. Very, very broad subject. Of course, cryptocurrency, precious metals, private placement stock. That's really the big four.
Hmm.
Now, some of the stuff I have seen, talk about very creative. And this is why I say spend time just looking for the ideas, different catalysts.
Hmm.
I had a conversation with one gentleman that he is a commercial roofer. He's always renting these 30 and 40 cubic yard dumpsters like you see at construction sites.
Yeah.
Because when he tears the old roofing material off, it's got to go in the dumpster.
Hmm.
He reached out because he had an idea. He struck a deal with a friend of his that's in the dumpster business, but needed more dumpsters. He was going to buy them as an investment and lease the dumpsters.
Mm.
He was going to have them painted an ugly color. Who would think of that? But I mean,
Genius.
just the dumpsters as an investment. We have a
Yeah.
couple of clients here. This is kind of a real estate related idea. A lot of it is. Um, his investment is renting washer and dryer units to apartment complexes.
Mm. Yeah.
That there's we've seen people invest in cemetery plots. That's a different type of real estate investing.
Yeah.
But getting out of the real estate investing, what about on the paper assets, taking participations in discounted notes,
Yeah.
mortgage
Businesses.
loans, tax liens? We've seen clients invest in livestock,
Mm.
farmland, you name it. As long as it's not collectibles and it's not life insurance contracts and it's something the IRA is making the investment, not the individual,
Yeah.
it's okay.
So Ted, I have a potbelly pig. I don't think I told you yet. And he gives me a return on investment because he gives me a smile on my face every time I see him. So
Okay.
could I securitize my potbelly pig, Phil?
That might be a little bit challenging. We'd have to see how you do it. I'll need a little more in the way of concrete details from you, Ivan, before I
Let's work on that instrument, brother. Let's make it
yeah,
happen.
that we might be able to do it or not. But trust me, there are so many different ways to securitize and do things these days.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. The next question is, how much capital should they be planning to have for acquiring or investing in a fund or syndication?
Yeah. If you're looking at doing some sort of fund or syndication investing, I would say probably about 80+% of all syndications are going to require a minimum investment of 25 to $100,000. And I'm talking about multifamily, multi-use, light industrial.
Mhm.
Those are the big ones we see out there today being syndicated. But there are other options out there. I have seen some crowdfunding or crowdsourcing platforms for mortgage loans that it's as little as $10
Mhm.
to invest in a mortgage loan participation.
Yeah.
Now, $10 in a self-directed IRA wouldn't work just because there are fees associated with the IRA. I would say if you're going to start a self-directed IRA with the intention of investing, you're probably going to want to bring it in to around the $10,000 to $20,000 amount to start,
Mhm.
just so you can make sure you have enough of a return coming in. Your expenses don't eat it up on the IRA, eat up your return, because you want to be able to grow and prosper over time. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't make that the bare minimum. Always keep adding to it because if you have over time, as you have more ideas and they generate more return, that IRA just grows, grows, and grows.
Yeah. What's speaking of fees, you guys have some sort of a flat fee structure, right? When helping people out?
Yeah, pretty much. There's a couple of ways we can do it. As far as the fees, if you're just going to be going into one investment, as long as we know which type of investment, the record keeping fee is not going to be anything more than $345 for the year. So it's not really much. There is going to be a one-time account opening fee here at Advanta IRA. And if you need any wires or anything sent, that will be
Mhm.
additional. But
Yeah.
we're all about full transparency here. So we do have the fee schedule posted.
Okay.
And we have a couple of different ways the fees can get charged. You can do an account value, asset-based fee, or just a per investment fee.
Okay.
Whatever is in your best interest, even if you want to change the fee schedule, that doesn't upset us. We just want you to do what's best for you. We're a fee
Mhm.
for service provider. But I can tell you one of the unique things with the IRA business is what's referred to as checkbook IRAs. We have clients that utilize the checkbook IRA. Essentially, all that is the IRA owning a single member LLC. And that single member is the IRA. Okay. And then the individual who holds the IRA becomes the manager
Okay.
of that IRA. So they can go out and open up a bank account. That's what gives them the checkbook privileges.
Mhm.
Now they still have to abide by the rules, but here's the cool thing. For Advanta IRA to record keep that, we only record keep the LLC. So it's only one fee. They could have 10, 25, 50 different investments in there. We're not going to charge them for each investment. We're going to charge just for the IRA, for the LLC, because that's where everything's being held in.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, so someone could be involved in 10 different private loans. They could own 7 rental properties in there, and they could have an investment with your attainable housing fund
Mhm.
and just be charged for holding everything inside of that LLC instead of having all 18 different investments with separate charges attached.
Yeah. And that's the predicament that you help me understand, basically, that I had this misconception that there was a whole lot of complications and you couldn't even visit the property if you had invested in owning a property. But you explained it to me that if you have a non-recourse loan and you could actually even get more involved in the property. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, if you're going to buy a property, and we can go over that with the case studies in a short while.
Mm.
If you're going to buy a property where you need to have a loan so you can make the purchase, that's going to have to be a non-recourse loan. And what non-recourse means, in the event of default, all the lender can take is that property. Okay. If it's a recourse loan, which is what a lot of us enter into outside of IRAs, there are some real estate investors that still do non-recourse, but it's a higher standard that must be met. But most under a recourse loan, if that property is foreclosed upon, when the lender sells the property, if there is any unpaid loan balance remaining, the lender sues the borrower and tries to reclaim that amount.
Right.
And
So
the
in a
reason why it
non-recourse, they
must,
don't.
yeah, and the reason why it must be non-recourse inside of an IRA is because you're limited to the dollar amounts that can be contributed to an IRA. So if it was a recourse loan and you got sued because of foreclosure and there was, say, $100,000 of unpaid balance still due to the lender, well, if you can only contribute $7,000 to the IRA, you can't satisfy the judgment. So that's why it has to be non-recourse.
So those non-recourse loans probably have lower LTVs too, right?
Slightly lower LTVs, slightly higher interest rates. The lender's just taking a little more risk, so they're
Yeah.
going to price it accordingly.
Yeah, of course. That makes sense. I think that's a natural place for us to pause and we could go ahead and get rolling on pulling up your
Yep.
slides. And I think we wanted to start with pages not 13 to 18. So jumping into slide 13 here, why do people choose to self-direct?
Yeah, it really comes down to 3 reasons. And we just have them in 3 separate buckets on the slide. And of course, I'll get these out, or you can email the slides out to the
Mhm.
viewers. and participants. But for a lot of people or a lot of investors, you being able to utilize your IRA funds away from the traditional channels, this opens up a whole new source of capital. A lot of people are just of the mindset that what they have in an IRA at the brokerage firm, that's all they're ever going to be able to do. And that's not really the case, because self-directed IRAs open up that whole world. Yeah, as I said, no life insurance contracts, no collectibles, anything else, you're pretty much going to be okay. The one other thing add to that, it cannot be outwardly illegal. I can tell you one of the investments that is a challenge to do is cannabis. So if you're investing in a business, I'll make up a name here, Cannabis Kingdom. Cannabis is illegal under federal law. A lot of custodians will not hold it. However, if you're investing in a business, the cannabis is not outwardly disclosed, but is a part of it. Who knows? We don't know.
Yeah.
It could just be
Like
a
maybe
totally
a
legit
CBD
business.
store.
Yeah. So say you're investing in Fat Tony's Pizza, LLC. Fat Tony also has a dispensary.
Mm-hmm.
Fat Tony's selling a lot of pizza. Okay. But it doesn't say Fat Tony Cannabis. So no custodian's going to have an issue with that. Fat Tony's Pizza, probably totally fine for all anybody knows you invested in a pizza business.
Mm-hmm.
So, but really, it opens up a whole new source of capital. Instead of having to go to your bank account and stroke a check to make an investment in whatever it is that you wish to fund, you could actually transfer some money over to a custodian from your brokerage firm IRA over to the self-directed IRA custodian and make that investment. The only difference is, say if it's one of the big names, the big name brokerage firms, they can't hold that, but Advanta IRA can. So it's a whole new source of capital. The other thing is, and we're experiencing this today, stock market fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
It's been going up and down. If you're reasonably good at math and you start taking a look at your account statements and the sort of returns you've been earning overall, you might be negative for the year. There's probably going to be a few of you out there that maybe have a slight positive return, but for the most part, the ups and downs of the stock market just wear out people.
Yeah.
And they much rather have something that they can see, touch, and feel figuratively, like a real estate syndication that on a regular intervals, those dividend distributions come into the account. They tend to like that more if they're going to receive, let's just say 6%, just to choose a number. It's more palatable to them knowing they have a physical asset, something they understand a little bit better than the latest technology stock. That's not going to be volatile in price, because most syndications, that price, if it's a $25,000 investment, that's pretty much what it stays at the entire time until disposition of the asset, when the anticipation is there'll be a profit on top of that. That's much more agreeable with a lot of people instead of the ups and downs of the stock market.
Yeah. And plus you got to be researching like crazy, like reading 200 pages a day and
Yeah,
yeah.
and I believe Warren Buffett, he's just retired, but he's always said he would read as much as 800 pages in a day.
Mm-hmm.
I could not read that many pages. I mean, he's a super reader.
Yeah.
I would have several naps in between on that 800 pages. Reading just relaxes me too
Yeah,
much.
me too.
But the other thing too is the tax benefits, Ivan. If you invest personally, every time you would receive that dividend distribution, well, that's got to get reported on your Form 1040, and the IRS is going to expect income tax. But when the investment is held inside of the self-directed IRA, the dividends, the rents, the profits, if it's a traditional IRA, that's tax deferred until you make the distribution some point in the future. And if it's a Roth IRA that's past that 5-year seasoning rule, it's tax free. And there's very, very few investments out there other than municipal bonds and qualified opportunity zones that are going to be tax-free.
Yeah. It effectively, is this a correct statement? It can reduce your tax income bracket too by,
It could in theory, yeah, because if you have, say, say you have gross income of $150,000, that would put you up fairly high in the brackets, not at the very top of the bracket, but a tangible number for most households. Say if 50,000 of that was coming from um, 50,000 of that income was paid into your IRA. Well, you don't have to pay taxes on that. So you're only paying taxes on the $100,000
right.
that's over. So it reduces the total dollars paid and it might squeeze you down into a lower bracket.
Yeah.
So this is definitely something, have a conversation with your accountant, because if you can reconfigure your income sources and how you get paid, you might be able to pay a lot less in taxes.
Yeah. What's the maximum amount somebody could pay in every year?
Into an IRA,
Yeah.
well, it's going to be basically $7,000 for the annual contribution. If you're like me, you're age 50 and older, I believe it's 8,000. Please just look up on the IRS.gov website.
Okay.
I used to be a CFP. I don't keep up with the numbers, but that'll put you on the dartboard.
Mm.
Now, with an IRA, though, there's also unlimited transfers, and you can move the monies between accounts.
Mhm.
So if you have money in an IRA elsewhere, you could transfer some or all of those dollars into a self-directed IRA. So your account balance can go from zero for a new account to whatever. And you can still make your annual contribution.
Mhm.
And then also the other big source of monies is former employers' retirement plans. When you leave a job, you can roll that money out of that retirement plan. Typically, we see it come from a 401k, but also pensions, profit sharing plans, cash balance plans, they're all eligible for rollover. And you don't have to roll the whole sum, you can roll a portion of it over. So you can actually fund an account to a pretty high level very quick.
Okay. Well, moving on to slide 15, these are the real estate assets that can be invested upon. We briefly touched on some of them already, but let's go over an example of a single family home for, let's say it's let's do the most aggressive type of real estate single family home, a fix and flip
Okay.
property.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it. There's a couple of ways in which single family homes can be done. And let's just talk about a single person scenario.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I may, Ivan, just use you in name only on this.
I refuse.
Okay. So um, John is going to go out and purchase a single family home as an investment property.
Yeah.
Now, what we typically see for single family investment properties, it's not going to be a $500,000 house unless you happen to live in a market where the cheapest houses are priced at that point. You're going to see these right about, I know one gentleman up in Cleveland, Ohio is buying the houses for about 50 grand a pop. So that's something that would clearly be in an IRA if someone chose to do so.
Yeah.
So let's say he goes out, buys a $50,000 rental house. Um, Two choices here. He can pay cash if he has the cash in his IRA, or he can pay part cash and take out a non-recourse loan. So he has the full amount. And by the way, any rehab costs, it's okay. Just depends how you want to pay for it. Do you want to borrow the money or do you want to just pay the cash out of your IRA? But once that property is in there, is in the IRA, the rent that gets paid is paid to the IRA. There's always going to be expenses with rental properties. There's going to be plumbers, electricians, exterminators, roofers, heating and air people. That's got to be paid out of the IRA. You cannot be paying that out of pocket. So you want to make sure you have enough cash in there to pay those bills.
Yeah.
But all the money that comes in from the rents net of the expenses, that does not flow through your Form 1040. That stays in the IRA. It does not have to be reported as taxable income. Now, one thing though that we do see quite a bit, particularly in the pricier real estate markets, and you and I live in one, Atlanta, Georgia.
Mhm.
Housing is not cheap here. It's
Right.
not as expensive as other parts of the country. But what we're seeing more and more of as real estate prices continue to rise is what's referred to as partnering, where two investors go in on a property. And that is totally permissible with the IRS. You just have to keep the proportions of ownership separate and keep the distributions in those proportions and the expenses. Follow me?
Yep.
Okay. So if you and I were going to invest in a property, you're going to use your self-directed IRA. You're going to have, I'll say 40% of the property, and I'm going to come in for 60%. But my 60%, I'm stroking the check out of my bank account. Okay.
Hmm.
So when that rent check comes for $1,000 every month, 400 of that rent goes to your IRA, 600 of the rent goes to my IRA, my bank account. All right.
Okay.
You, because it's in your IRA, you're not paying taxes. I have to pay taxes on my $600 every month
Oh, okay.
because I'm doing it. Now, if I used my IRA, yes, two IRA investors can go in and participate on the same property, or three
Hmm.
or four. IRS doesn't care. We just have to keep those percentages divided.
Yeah.
Now, when the expenses come, say we send out the heating and air guy to do seasonal service on the air conditioning unit. And just to keep the math simple, say that service cost $100. It used to, it doesn't anymore.
Yeah.
Um, Ivan, you would be responsible for paying $40 of that service, and I would be responsible for paying $60 of that service. And I would have to stroke that check out of my bank account. You would have to present the bill for your $40 to your IRA custodian so they can cut the check out of your IRA.
Okay. And is there a fee for, I guess, transaction stuff like that?
On our side, the way we have the record keeping fees priced, cutting the checks for that is part of our service.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, if we were requested to send a cashier's check for a closing on a property, then we'd have to charge what our bank charges us for a cashier's check.
Okay.
But normal processing, they can also be sent ACH if the company is set up to receive ACH payments.
Okay. So that brings up a technical issue for me. Um, it might be a predicament for other people. Most of the contractors I work with, they want to be paid with like Zelle or Cash App or, you know, Venmo, but
Okay.
that wouldn't be feasible in this scenario, right? So
It could be.
would it?
If you did the LLC with the IRA with the checkbook control, in theory, you have to set up that LLC and it has a checking account at the bank. If that bank can set that checking account up on Zelle, which most banks utilize that service, you could pay them Zelle that way.
Oh, and in that case, would the custodian log into the bank account and send it?
No, no, you would have control so you can authorize the payment because you're the
Oh,
manager of the LLC.
okay. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And then Venmo, I haven't done it, but my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, with Venmo, you're basically entering your bank account details
Mhm.
and it's going to be the transfer from one person to the other. So in theory, you could still do that. You have to keep your records though,
Yeah.
because if the IRS were ever to audit and ask a few questions, hey, Ivan, can you show us um, the bill related to this $40 payment you made? Just present the IRS auditor with the bill
Yeah.
and say, hey, this was my $40 this $40 was my 40% of the $100 air conditioning service. And they'll say, and how'd you send this? And it said, Venmo or Zelle through my bank account that the IRA utilizes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So that's another mind-blowing thing for me, because I thought for the longest that some sort of unbiased third party or completely irrelevant third party had to be outside of that, had to handle everything, even managing the property. So
They do. You cannot, there's a thing within the IRS rules that you cannot be receiving a direct benefit. Now, when we're talking about managing a property, yeah, you're going to have a third party. You cannot do that yourself. IRS frowns on that.
oh, okay.
The benefit you're receiving is not is everything needs to be arm's length away from you, one step removed, which means you're going to have a third party manage the property, repair, do the maintenance, that sort of stuff. You can't do that yourself because you're receiving a benefit by increased returns by doing that. IRS will not permit that.
So in this case, for this $100 bill, the property manager would give us a call and say, you owe 40%, your partner owns 60%, send it to this person.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I'm glad you brought up property manager too, because property managers can be very effective in not only just handling the phone calls and the day-to-day headaches of a property, but when they collect the rents and they pay the bills for the month, they can split out what everyone is owed net and send that to the IRAs. So if you had $1,000 a month come in, you had to pay bills of, say $300 for that month. Let the property manager pay that 300 for the month or 700 left over, split it out 60-40 like it is in our hypothetical example. So you get your 40% cut of that, $280. That goes to your IRA. That's net of all the expenses. And then I would receive my portion, my 60%, the 420, and I got to pay taxes on it.
Yeah. I guess
But
another
property
related,
management companies are very solid and worthwhile in that regard.
yeah, just got to do some good vetting to make sure they're, quality guys or gals.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
They're in a
like with
lot of
anything.
ways they're an employee to you and
Yeah,
your IRA.
yeah.
So you want to make
For
sure you
any
get a good employee.
for any beginners too, I would advise um always have a 30-40% reserve remaining, like instead of depleting the reserve of the bank account as fast as possible and everybody getting, the remaining amount. Keep a good amount of money in there for, like, a plumber needs to be called by the property manager overnight or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, always make sure you have enough money in the IRA. And of course, a best practice, you can always co-opt this from the commercial real estate industry. They always take a portion of the rent roll every month and put it into a reserve account. And that's going to pay for the major expenses that come up. You got to re-roof a building. Heating and air systems need to be replaced. They only last so long. How many times have you been in an office building and the lobby is all ripped up because they're remodeling it?
Yeah.
Um, a lot of times, a portion of that, at least from the repair perspective, if it's for a portion of the lobby, they have a reserve account to pay for that. Now, if it's a significant renovation to the building, they're probably going to go out and refinance the building, take cash out if they're in a position, and that's going to help fund a big portion of that budget.
Yeah. So, as you know, and as I know, being a syndicator too, like, we have to think about worst case scenarios, especially with your background, you
Always.
know about that. So, tell me about the worst case scenario of, like, what if, like, I met an investor that ended up buying two Section 8 properties, and they ended up being pretty amazing cash cows, but they didn't do proper inspections, and it turned out it had foundation issues.
Uh-oh.
Yes. So tell me about a worst case scenario of, like, what if the IRA gets depleted from bleeding out cash asset goes wrong, etc.
Yeah, you're in a little bit of a predicament there. Um, Obviously, with an investment like that, there's going to be a capital call that goes out.
Mhm.
So everyone's going to have to pony up additional cash. If all the dollars, if all the investment dollars from the initiation of the investment came from an IRA and there's not enough cash in there to deplete it, that's when you're going to need tax advice. There are some guidelines where the IRS will allow monies to be infused into a property. You can't do it through the IRA. It's going to have to be through your bank account, and that's going to rechange or reconfigure all the distribution percentages.
Oh,
So that is where a very good CPA, whom is very knowledgeable of the tax laws that relates to IRAs, is going to be needed because you're
yeah.
going to be going into a gray area and they're going to have to guide you through that so you don't get into trouble with the IRS. I have seen it done. It just takes some very careful planning.
So now we're talking about capital counts,
Yep,
revising ownership structures.
correct.
Okay. So it's possible.
Correct.
It's not impossible. It's just gonna take some configuring.
Absolutely. Now, what I have seen where people go into properties, even if it's just, our hypothetical example, you and I, um, there will be the use of each investor using their IRA and their bank account. Because even though you should not be changing those those percentages out of each bucket, because you have the bank account money involved, you're going to reduce the strain on an IRA. So if you have other monies outside in another IRA, you can just transfer those in to cover. And then you can take the rest of the strain off by using your checking account, as long as you're maintaining the original percentages.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
you can shuffle things around. And I think you made a really good point too, Ivan. Yeah, you have to think about the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And that is with any investment, whether it's taxable, tax deferred in an IRA, outside of an IRA. It's what we call, in my past life, risk control.
Mhm.
You always have to engage in risk control because the biggest screw ups I have seen is when the risk control standards were very lax. You just have to think of the worst case scenario. And of course, sometimes the solution is this investment's not working out. Let's sell it. Let's get rid of it. We got to move on.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the
Even if,
outcome.
even if it hurts, it has to be done sometimes.
Yep, sometimes you do have to take a loss. That is part of the game. Not all investments go up in value.
Yeah. Let me see. So next slide is paper assets. Did you want to
Yeah, unless you want
speak
to
to that a
cover
little bit?
trailer parks, or excuse me, mobile home parks.
That's a unique cash cow asset, but since we're starting to run out of time, we could go
Yeah,
on to
let's
the
just go
next
to
slide.
paper assets.
Yeah.
This is the one nearest and dearest to my heart. This is the area I personally invest in.
Oh, okay.
I will tell you right up front, you need to be good with math, or at
Hmm.
least using a financial calculator. You can get an app for your phone. I grew up using the HP 12C, so I can do the cash flow calculations and the yield calculations. But this is where you really get into stuff where you can fractionalize the investments. And what I mean
Mm.
by fractionalize is instead of buying 100% of it, maybe you only want to buy 10 or 20% of it. Paper assets are easily divided. Physical assets are also easily divided, but it takes a lot more in the way of documents. But mortgage loans, as I mentioned, I've seen some places or some platforms you can invest as little as $10 to participate in a mortgage loan. Tax liens have always been very popular, particularly in Georgia. Our foreclosure laws are very favorable for tax lien investing.
Yeah, we're not a judicial state.
Yeah, non-judicial. I heard one case last year in New York State. Loan had been in default for 13 years, and finally the landlord or the lender was able to evict the tenant.
Oh my God.
They just kept filing one appeal after the
You
other,
gotta be
tying
kidding
it up
me.
in courts. 13 years, didn't pay a dime in rent.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, that's New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, tax deeds are very similar to liens. It just depends how the state is structured. Notes, if you're very good at the math, you can buy a note, sell participations, increase your yield. I've seen people earn as much as, or investors earn as much as 30, 40% doing that with notes. Very creative, but you got to be good with the math. Options against real estate properties. You hold that right to buy that property at some point in the future for an agreed upon price. What if the property value of the property goes up and you've owned that option for 2 years and it's getting close to exercise or let it expire? You can sell that to somebody.
Yeah. I had a direct transaction regarding that too. Somebody, we couldn't sell a piece of land, but this person that was interested ended up offering $1,000 a month to hold it for 3 years.
Yeah,
And in Atlanta, that's pretty valuable.
yeah, again, this is stuff you need to be a subject matter expert on or
Yeah.
pretty close to it, and you're also going to need a good attorney and a CPA that understands it because they are
Yeah.
invaluable.
Yeah.
You go
Good
into
real
a
estate coach
transaction,
too.
lose all your money, you won't do that again.
Yeah. The
Uh,
interesting thing about this particular type is that because you're talking about fractionalizing, it's a lot of diversification.
yeah, if you choose to diversify, because there is an argument going on in the investment community, using that term as a broad term. Diversification is a good way to preserve wealth because you're spreading out your risk. But there are some people in the growth phase of wealth accumulation that prefer to concentrate.
Yeah, yeah.
And they don't really want to diversify because they're willing to take the risk for higher returns. And then they get to a set point or a point of growth where they say, all right, I've got enough tied up in this. Let's diversify and break it out. I don't want to take a rollback.
Oh yeah. There's that. Also kind of referring to like the let's say mortgages, like notes. If
Hmm.
you're invested in five different notes at 10,000 a piece, that could be a method versus five different multifamilies, they don't know, 100,000 a piece. Um, that sort of
Yeah.
asset diversification of the notes.
Well, here's one thing to take a page out of my playbook. Whenever there's a lien against the property because there's a mortgage or a loan against it, that is the only asset. That property is a liability. Everyone works for the lender until that is repaid.
Mhm.
And if the lender doesn't get repaid, what do? They foreclose. And there's a reason why every lender wants the borrower to have money in the deal. It provides the cushion.
Yeah.
So the lender actually acquires that property, whether they want to or not, at a discount. As long as the values have not materially changed. And then they can sell it. Maybe they put it in their own portfolio. So sometimes being a private lender is not a bad thing, particularly in your IRA. We have clients here that do that. And if they have to foreclose and take a property, they may want to put it in their own property portfolio
Yeah.
because they
That's
just
true too.
acquired it at a discount. Accounts receivable are another one. I have seen clients invest in medical receivables. Who's going to pay the receivable? Usually it's an insurance company. It's just taking a little while to collect, but that healthcare provider needs to be paid. Margins are getting thin in that business.
Yeah.
And someone will sell the receivables at a discount to an investor.
Hmm.
And someone might be willing to take a 5% haircut to get the money today or next week. And you're going to get repaid in 30 days. Well, if you can wash, rinse, repeat and do that every month, In a perfect world, you'd earn a 60% return doing that.
Yeah.
But the world doesn't work perfect. That's an annualized return, by the way. But the
Yeah.
world isn't perfect. So you might have an opportunity one month to buy some discounted receivables, earn your 3 to 5%. Maybe 2 or 3 months later, the next opportunity comes. But
Yeah.
still, pretty solid returns. And this is buying small. You're not buying the whole lot, you're just buying a portion.
Hmm. And by the way, for anybody watching and listening, we're getting into some nitty-gritty stuff, and all of this is informational purposes only. We don't know your goals. We don't know your financial position. We don't know if you have $1 or $1 million in the bank. So take it with a grain of salt. Always, like he just mentioned, consult your attorney, your CPA for everything. This is kind of just high-level advice. Um, so other alternative assets.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a farm animal right there, brother. So my potbelly pig qualifies immediately.
Yeah, as long as it's a live, living farm animal. But you also have to have a good accountant. There's certain ways that stuff needs to be record kept, Ivan. I am not a subject matter expert on it, but we do see investors put money into livestock, movie projects, equipment leasing. People that lease bobcats and backhoes,
Mhm.
their IRAs own the equipment. I've got a friend personally here in town. He invests in startup restaurants.
Mm.
He's in them 2 to 3 years, sells and moves on, or sells his interest in it and moves on.
Okay.
Private company stock. There might be great opportunities to buy into a company at some stage in their life cycle. Maybe they'll be acquired in the future. Maybe it pays a great dividend. Whatever your focus is, you have that.
Hmm.
Oil and gas is a huge thing we see here at Advanta IRA.
Hmm.
Uh, really is an income producing investment.
Yeah.
Um, Forex accounts, all this algorithmic trading today, because it's such high velocity turnover trading, that generates a lot of taxable short-term gains on the investments. It's usually best to have that in an IRA so you don't have to pay the taxes. If you hold that outside of an IRA, you're going to receive a 1099 and that might mess up your tax bill for the year.
Hmm.
Precious metals, partnerships, I mean, anything. The possibilities and creativity are endless. And that's really the fascinating part of this business.
That's beautiful. Um, since we're kind of in the last 10 minutes, I'd like to just shortcut to, let me see. Let's go to page 35,
Yeah.
um, and just kind of talk about what it could look like to start the process.
Yeah, it's actually very simple. We pride ourselves on ease of doing business. And I'm glad because I'm not someone that likes to get tied up in administrative details. It takes all of 15 minutes to open an account. We do it as an online questionnaire, and then you'll receive a few minutes later from DocuSign an email, and that'll be the account opening documents for digital signature.
Okay.
Just do that. In 24 hours, we'll get the account opened. Most cases, we just need a wet ink signature on a transfer form if that's where the money's coming from. Another IRA, we'll email that out to you, and you can just email it back to us. Funding the account as quick as the losing custodian can do that. In most cases, it's about 2 weeks or inside of 2 weeks. And then from there, the account's funded, and then you just let us know what you're going to be investing in. And Advanta IRA will be the one making the purchase on your behalf as the investor, because it's got to be titled in the IRA name.
All right. And
So,
why does it have to be a previous employer plan? Why can't it be a current one, for example, with funds in it?
yeah, there is a rule for most people. You need to be terminated, you need to have terminated status with the administrator to be eligible to roll out the money from a previous employer's plan.
Okay.
However, and this applies to a very small slice of the population, there is written into federal law on certain retirement plans that there could be what's referred to as an in-service non-hardship withdrawal. And generally speaking, you need to be age 59 and a half, and there might be some additional qualification criteria
Mm.
imposed by the employer. Could be a length of service requirement. That's usually what we see. Could be vesting, how much of the account is vested versus unvested. But if one qualifies for an in-service non-hardship withdrawal, then they could, while still working, roll out a portion or maybe even all of that account balance.
Oh, okay.
But if you're at least 59 and a half and you're curious about it, check with your retirement plan administrator. They'll tell you if it's permissible or not under the plan.
Okay. So I would qualify because I'm 82 years old.
Potentially, as long as your employer allowed for it. Where I do see a lot of it is in, with federal government employees, the TSP. That is a feature of the TSP. That's permissible. I helped 2 individuals this month do that.
Okay. Let's go over some of the prohibited stuff, the don'ts on page 37.
Yeah. Getting into some of the prohibited transactions. First of all, you cannot physically hold the assets in your possession, such as cryptocurrency or precious metals. If you're
Okay.
buying gold coins that are eligible for IRAs, they got to be held by a depository.
Okay.
It goes back to that question, are you receiving a benefit? And the law requires that this be one step removed from your control. So that's why there's a need for a depository to hold those assets.
Mm.
I also mentioned, life insurance, collectibles. You can't do that. That is prohibited. You also have to be careful of the individuals involved in a transaction. You cannot do business with your IRA between direct bloodline relatives of your direct
Okay.
lineage. And that means you as the account owner and your spouse, that is a no-no. You cannot do business with your parents, your grandparents, great grandparents, if that applies. Cannot do it with your children and their spouses. That's
Okay.
your direct lineage. And it all revolves around taxes. I mean, face it, that's what the IRS is there for.
Mhm.
But there's also the estate tax laws, et cetera. They don't want anything messing that up or going outside of it. That's why the prohibition there. However, nieces and nephews, aunts and uncles, siblings, you can do business and loan money back and forth between them.
Oh,
They're not prohibited. I just did a loan with my brother. He was building a new swimming pool. Going to refi his house to pay for it, but had to put down the deposits. Struck a good deal on a contract. I loaned
okay.
him the money. 45 days later, he paid me back with interest.
Okay. What does that
Almost
look like? Because there's not a property manager in position in between. What does that look like from a procedural perspective?
for that loan I did with my brother.
Yeah.
Just like any other loan, Ivan, we agreed to terms. It just has to be market terms. IRS is not an expert. But if I said, 1% is what you would owe me on the interest, they might frown on that. So I just said, all right, this is the loan amount. You're going to pay me interest at prime. That's the annualized rate. We're putting it on a promissory note. We're both going to sign it. And I'm going to hand it over to my custodian and they will fund the loan. And that's all
Oh,
that it
okay.
took.
Okay.
And my brother was paying me for 2 months until he got the house refied.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just made the last interest payment, the principal payment, and that was it. I just released him from the loan.
Okay.
It's very simple.
Yeah. Wow. I guess the last slide, let's go to 40, 'cause that sounds
Yeah.
like an interesting one. The types of properties, in this case,
Oh,
a rental
yes, the
condo.
rental condo on the beach. Yeah, this is one where the rental condos on the beach are totally fine. The rules around them are you cannot use them for personal use. They are solely to be an investment. You can't be in there doing the maintenance, the repair, the cleanup. You got to pay third parties to do it.
Okay.
The rent needs to be paid to the IRA. So it's no different than the house example we were talking about a few moments ago. But one of the issues comes up is when you're renting it to family members. If it's
Hmm.
direct lineage, that's a no-no. Could you rent it to a sibling? Probably so. Is it being done repeatedly? IRS might frown on that if it's repeated, because is that being used for family use or investment purpose?
Right.
So you get into some gray areas, but really this is where common sense prevails. If you're going to buy it for purely investment purposes, just keep the transaction clean. Don't lease it to family members. Don't use it for personal use. Just make sure it's third parties. Could be your neighbor. That's fine if they want to rent your condo. Make sure it's at market rate. And then, common sense prevails. Just keep good records. If the IRS asks questions, you have a defensible position.
Hmm. Would it also be like, let's say, not personal use? Would it qualify if I rented it at market rates for a weekend?
For non-personal use,
I mean, I guess it would be kind of personal use if it was a vacation, but I'm thinking about like as if I was a average person paying, $100 a day, and it was rented for $100 a day every other weekend. I guess it would still not qualify because I'm essentially the owner indirectly, so I can't visit.
correct. You couldn't do it because even though you're paying rent, you're gaining a benefit because you're stuffing your account with cash.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's a no-no.
Hmm.
You couldn't do that. However, as I said, you could lease it to your neighbor, business associate, someone there in the office wants to go to the beach and use your condo, charge them rent.
Hmm. Okay,
No
gotcha.
problems there. What I can tell you is don't do what one individual I know did. They thought it was the best investment ever because they were pocketing the rental cash.
Oh,
They bought it through the IRA, but the rent payments weren't showing up in the IRA.
oh no.
Yeah. IRS audited his tax return, uncovered that. Taxes, penalties, everything applied, and the IRA was completely disallowed.
Yeah,
You
you got to
wish you
make
never
sure you
did
have.
it. It cost him a ton of cash.
Yeah, you got to make sure you have your ducks in a row.
Yeah, and just check with the custodian. We're here to provide advice and guidance on that as it relates to the IRS rules. And just make sure you're just applying common sense and ask questions when needed.
Yeah,
You avoid a lot of headache that way.
yeah. Wow, well, you just covered a lot of mind-blowing stuff, man. I'm sure for a lot of people, they got it in simple terms too.
Well, hopefully I kept it simple enough for everybody because I know
That's
that there's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down with this material.
yeah. And feel free to reach out to Ted. He's a great guy, always very casual, like you're having a drink with him. The conversations. The first time we talked one-on-one last week, we ended up talking for like an hour, hour and a half because it went so well.
Yeah, well, that was kind of the genesis for doing this.
Yeah, exactly. Um, okay, well, as we wrap up here, what's the best way that folks could reach out to you?
Yeah, best way to reach out to me is simply by phone. And Ivan, I'll send you out just a PDF version of the slides you can email to everybody or post on your website.
Mm.
But my phone number here at the office is 470-866-6185. Or if you go to the Advanta IRA website, you look at the team, you can click on my photo, and there's all my contact information. AdvantaIRA.com.
Yes, and like you mentioned towards the beginning, they have webinars all the time. They also have Zooms where you could
You
get to know
do.
other folks that are actively with Event IRA, and other property syndicators and etc. Um, but yeah, reach out to him if you want to invest your IRA into self-directed assets. And yeah, thanks for your time. Can't wait to see you in the next episode.
All
Bye.
right. Absolutely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Before you go, quick question for you. Do you prefer giving a hand up, not a handout, to people in need? Did you know that you can build serious wealth and cash flow while helping people out? Financial Freedom on Autopilot is brought to you by Common Walk, a hedge fund built on wealth through impact. We invest in and educate on niche real estate investments that build passive wealth and cash flow for investors like you, while providing opportunities to others that want a better life for themselves. While no investment is guaranteed, it's interesting to learn that billionaires like investor Warren Buffett have tripled down on the real estate niche we've mastered, which is affordable housing. As multifamily operators in this space, we've consistently generated double-digit returns for almost 20 years. To learn more about this niche investment class that literally no one is talking about, schedule a call with us at commonwalk.com/contact. This episode is for informational purposes only and does not constitute an offering to sell a security. Such an offering would solely be made through Common Walk's confidential private placement memorandum, in strict accordance with all applicable securities laws and regulations of the United States. Prospective investors must rely on their own examination of the fund's prospects and the terms of the investment, including the merits and risks involved. All content shared in this recording does not speak to every individual or entity's financial position, goals, and risk tolerance. Therefore, consult a trusted financial advisor, certified public accountant, business coach, and attorney before making any financial decisions.